The wind howled through the pines when I pulled up to my cabin that afternoon. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out of my truck, grocery bag in hand, humming to myself. It was supposed to be a quiet day, just me, my cabin, and the sound of the woods breathing. But before I even reached the porch, I froze. My front door was wide open. At first, I thought I had left it that way by accident. Maybe I had forgotten to lock it when I left for town, but that thought evaporated the moment I saw movement inside. Two men in uniforms, walking around my living room like they owned the place. One of them was flipping through my mail. The other was taking photos with a clipboard in hand. I dropped my bag and yelled, "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing in my house?" They both turned around calmly, as if I was an intruder. The older one, bald, about 50, wearing a dark blue jacket with a patch that said HOA Enforcement Unit, stepped forward and said, "Sir, we're conducting an inspection." Routine procedure. Inspection? I barked, taking a step closer. This isn't a damn HOA property. This is my cabin on my land. Who are you people? The younger guy, tall with mirrored sunglasses and a smirk, said, "This entire area falls under Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association jurisdiction. You're required to comply with property maintenance checks." I laughed, partly in disbelief, partly in anger. Cedar Ridge HOA? That's down the hill. I bought this place precisely to avoid all that HOA nonsense. The bald one pulled out a clipboard, flipping through some papers. "You're mistaken, sir. The association recently expanded boundaries to include all lots connected by Ridgeview Road. That includes you." I felt my blood boil. Ridgeview Road wasn't even paved. It was a half-mile dirt path leading up to my cabin. I had cut that path myself. "You have no right to be here," I said through gritted teeth. "Now, get out of my house before I call the sheriff." The younger one stepped forward, resting his hand casually on his belt like some kind of pretend cop. "We're the only enforcement you need to talk to, sir. Failure to comply with HOA standards can result in fines or property seizure." That word, seizure, made something snap inside me. "Out! Now!" I shouted. They exchanged a look, then shrugged like this was no big deal. The older one scribbled something on his clipboard and said, "You'll be hearing from the board." Then, just as casually as they had entered, they walked out, climbed into a white SUV with Cedar Ridge HOA Patrol printed on the side, and drove away down the road. I stood there, stunned, my heart hammering in my chest. That night, I went over every inch of my cabin. Nothing was stolen, but things had been moved. My drawers were open. My private files had been shuffled. They'd even taken photos of my tool shed. Something wasn't right. So, the next morning, I drove down to the Cedar Ridge HOA office, a sleek little building at the entrance to the fancy gated part of the neighborhood. Inside, everything smelled of lemon cleaner and control. A woman behind the counter smiled politely. "How can I help you?" "I'd like to speak with whoever runs the place," I said. She frowned slightly. "May I ask what it's regarding?" "Your so-called enforcers broke into my home yesterday." I snapped. "They said it was an inspection." Her smile faltered. "Sir, our inspectors always leave notices before entering any property. Perhaps you're mistaken?" "Mistaken?" I leaned on the counter. "You have two goons dressed like cops trespassing in my cabin. I want answers." She typed something on her computer, then looked back up. "What's your address?" I gave it to her. She frowned again. "Oh, sir, that's not part of Cedar Ridge." "I know that." I shouted. "But your men claimed it was." Her eyes darted nervously toward a door behind her. "One moment, please." After a few minutes, a tall man in a gray suit came out. Smooth hair, perfect smile, and eyes that didn't blink enough. "Mr. Dalton, is it?" "Yeah. You're the manager?" "HOA director," he corrected. "And I believe there's been some confusion." "Confusion? Your men broke into my cabin." "That's not confusion. That's trespassing." He raised a hand calmly. "Our enforcement team sometimes assists with adjacent property compliance. It's possible they were verifying environmental standards." "Environmental standards?" I scoffed. "You're telling me they can enter private property without consent? Only if it affects the community, he said smoothly. Well, your community ends half a mile before my land. I have the deeds to prove it. He smiled that tight, politician smile again. Bring them in. We'll review the boundary maps. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. It wasn't an offer. It was a warning. That night, I started digging. I found out that Cedar Ridge HOA had recently filed for a jurisdictional extension with the county, a shady maneuver to claim nearby properties as part of their community. They had no legal right yet, but they were acting as if it were already approved. And apparently, I wasn't the only one. A man named Tom Granger, who lived in an old farmhouse about a mile away, had been dealing with the same thing. I called him up, and he invited me over. When I got there, Tom showed me photos of his barn, padlocked shut by the HOA enforcement unit. They left a citation saying he was violating visual harmony standards by having peeling paint. He had already filed a police report, but nothing had happened. The sheriff's office said it's a civil matter. Tom said bitterly. They think it's just a paperwork issue. But those guys, they're not just enforcing paint colors. They're looking for something. What do you mean? I asked. He hesitated. You ever notice those drones? I blinked. What drones? He pointed out the window. Nighttime, between 10 and midnight. They hover right above our properties. I think they're mapping the land, trying to see what's underneath. I thought he was exaggerating. Until that night, around 11:30, I was sitting by the window in my cabin when I heard it, a faint buzzing. I turned off the lights, peeked outside, and saw a small drone hovering above my shed. My tool shed, the one they'd photographed. The next morning, I went down there to check it. The lock was broken, and inside, my generator was gone. I called the sheriff immediately. He came out, took a report, and then sighed. We've had a few complaints about those HOA guys. But legally, it's murky. If they claim you're part of their jurisdiction, it's technically a civil dispute, not criminal trespass. I was losing it. They broke in. They stole my property. He looked genuinely sorry. I'll file the report. But if I were you, I'd get a lawyer. So I did. My attorney, a sharp old guy named Patrick, reviewed the deeds and property lines. After 2 days, he called me furious. They're bluffing. The HOA has no legal claim on your land. Their boundary expansion was rejected by the county. They're committing criminal trespass and fraud. I'm filing an injunction immediately. But before we could even submit it, things escalated. The next week, I came home to find a notice nailed to my door. It read, Cedar Ridge HOA hereby notifies the owner of parcel hashtag 2049A that failure to comply with maintenance standards will result in property forfeiture under Section 8 to 4 of the HOA Code. Underneath, in small letters, final warning. I tore it down, ripped it in half, and called Patrick. He said, they're bluffing. They can't take your property. Just stay calm and record everything. That night, I set up motion sensors and cameras around the cabin. Around midnight, the alert started going off. 2 SUVs rolled up quietly, headlights off. 4 men got out, all wearing HOA enforcement jackets. 1 carried bolt cutters. They headed straight for my shed. This time, I didn't yell. I didn't run. I just hit record, called 911 and watched from the shadows. The police arrived in 10 minutes, sirens blaring, lights flashing. The HOA cops froze mid-act, caught red-handed trying to break into my property again. Turns out, they weren't official HOA employees at all. The director had hired a private security firm, dressing them up as enforcers to intimidate property owners into giving up their land. Why? Because the Cedar Ridge Board had quietly sold rights to a development company planning a luxury resort expansion. My cabin and Tom's farm were right in the middle of it. The county sheriff's office arrested the fake officers and the director himself for fraud, trespassing, and conspiracy. The development deal fell apart. And me? I became a local legend. The guy who stood up to the fake HOA cops. Now, when I sit on my porch at sunset, listening to the forest hum, I still glance at the road sometimes, half expecting that white SUV to come crawling up again. But all I see are deer wandering freely across the gravel. And I smile, because this land, my land, finally feels like mine again.